Well, hey everybody, it's Perch. By the way, I get a lot of questions, but I don't get the questions. I always feel like somebody could ask me the really tricky, hard questions, and I will answer them. But they don't do it. People ask me very polite questions. They ask me various things, but I think there's a handful of questions out there. You guys could actually you could do something pretty aggressive. It would be I don't. I'm just putting that out there. A little challenge. Anyway, all right. Question is, why does Marvel Comics even make series like this? And let's see where this is going. It says, "Greetings, Perch P. Perchington. Wait, Perch P. Perching Tong the third." All right. I'm regretting not calling one of my daughters Perch. You know, I'm very pleased with the names of my daughters. They both have double meanings. Triple meanings. They have a meaning in Japanese, they have a meaning in English, and then they have a special meaning that's just for me that Mrs. Perch suspects, but she doesn't think I'd be stupid enough to kind of apply that. And so it is. One of my daughters has her name is linked to my favorite character in Game of Thrones. Now, I'm not a big Game of Thrones fan. I know it's a very nerdy thing to do. But, there is that connection there to Game of Thrones that I'm very proud of. And whatever. All right, let's get to this mail. First of all, thanks for not closing down your channel yet. It's coming. I continue to enjoy your insight and commentary. Hope you keep going for as long as you enjoy it. That's the plan. Anyway, I just finished the current Sentry series by Jason Liu. What a steaming pile of rotten garbage. Such a shame, as I find myself enjoying several great titles from Marvel currently, like Ultimate Spider-Man, Immortal Thor, and Avengers Twilight. I like Ultimate Spider-Man. Avengers Twilight feels like bait to some extent. I mean, I like it, but also feels like it's written. I don't know. I'm not going to thumb my nose at fan service, but it's too easy. And Immortal Thor, I dislike. And I don't know if I just come to dislike Al Ewing. I don't know, but I read this thing and I'm like, fuck no, I'm not in the mood. That's how I feel. I know other people feel the same. By the way, another title that a lot of people like, and I acknowledge that. And so if you're looking for comics, you might want to go check it out. The Fantastic Four series, that's Ryan North, right? A lot of people are liking that series. It's not for me. That's the most polite way I can say it. It is hard, not for me. And I wish it was, because I liked Fantastic Four, but fuck that title. But anyway, I know a lot of you like it, and well, it's a perfect example. I respect that you like it. I'm glad you like it. Classic retailer mentality. You spend your money. Let's buy it. If you're happy, I'm happy. But I don't want to read this book. I do, but I don't want to. Somebody was arguing with me like, I've read more comics than Perch. I'm willing to bet I'm in the 1% of people who have comics that have been read. I'm sure there are people who have read more comics than me, but fuck, it's not many. It really is not many. I mean, look, long hours at the comic shop reading everything. And I read very fast, so I mean, I can churn through a lot. Typically, when I get the new comics for the week, I go through them in that day, in that night. And that's like 100 comics. So anyway, I'm just saying, if you can throw down with a lot of things, more attractive, funnier, better, all kinds of stuff. But I will say throwing down on read more comics is a losing battle for you. But that's fine. That's fine. Whatever you got to do. It's not like there's an award for this shit. Anyway, some background. I got into comics. I'm back to the mail. So background, I got into comics from Brian Michael Bendis' New Avengers from 2004. No. That would be 2008. That was later, my friend. I may be wrong. I think that was later, though. Because this is after Disassembled. Now, that would have been later. He was doing Daredevil back then, I think. Anyway, I loved every issue, and the series is still very important to me till this day. In it, a central character is the Sentry, Robert Riddles. He is originally presented as a mystery, and we get to follow his story all the way through Mighty Avengers and eventually Dark Avengers, concluding in an epic fight in Siege. All great comics hold that special place in my heart. It's likely nostalgia, but to me, the Sentry was and is still quite an interesting character, and I think Marvel struggled a lot with. His short run from 2018 is great, though, as was his original miniseries. I I don't know about the 2008 series, but by the way, I agree with everything you say. I think the New Avengers run, as much as people crap on Bendis, was actually quite good. He basically carved his mark. With that said, let's look at some of the problems of the latest series. Number one, it replaces a white male hero with a person of color disabled girl. If that isn't already a tired meme at this point, I don't know what is. Robert appears in a few flashback panels, but that's it. It has a blonde white male as the villain who has no motivation other than evil serial killer and power, unlimited power. Number three, it heavily focuses on identity markers and leans into how important cerebral palsy is as a defining element of the new main character, Mallory. Ugh. Number four, they defeat the villain using the power of friendship and diversity. Real original. Number five, it doesn't refer to or build on the existing material regarding Robert Reynolds, his story, supporting cast, or even the dark side of the Void. They have a single editor's note as a reference to a story from the mid-2000s and name drop the Void once in the final issue. It's incredibly obvious that Jason Liu has no interest in Robert Reynolds at all. He wanted to tell an original story. And now for the crux of it is, and my actual question, why even make this series at all? A year from now, the almighty MCU is set to introduce the Sentry in the Thunderbolts movie, and that's your clue. And not only is it going to be as Ryan Reynolds, but as a white male will be paying him. Why would Marvel bring the title back for 1 year before his movie debut just to replace him in his own series with the original character the fandom will have no doubt reject? I'm aware that Stephen Yeun was originally going to be playing Sentry, but my point still stands. He is supposed to be playing Robert, not his replacement. Even in the world of corporate synergy, it makes no sense. Please help me understand. I can't help you understand, but I'll be like ugly and sarcastic here for a moment. The reality is the reason why you have a different Sentry as opposed to kind of Robert Reynolds, and there's a million ways you can bring people back from the dead and do all kinds of shit with the character. There's a million ways you can do it. The reason why we got this shit is because the editors said, hey, let's do a Sentry series. Let's not commit to it in any real fashion. And we will kind of let the writer do whatever. Like, let's experiment if the Sentry power went to somebody else. And they pitched this idea, the editors, to a writer who was desperate to get some Marvel writing credit. And so the writer is like, may or may not have known the Sentry, maybe read the same Bendis comics you did, but is basically in a world of, fuck it, I want a paycheck, so all right. And you get this vomited out, Saturday morning cartoon PSA of a comic, and it was really garbage. I mean, the problem is, look, you can do disabled characters, you can do people of color, you can do all kinds of different things with your comics. That doesn't mean they have to be shitty. And the problem is when you don't care at all about the output, and I defy, I've had this argument with people at Marvel before. It's like, you don't think people care about comics? No, not all of them. No. For many people, it's a paycheck. And I'm sorry if that sounds crass or rude or any number of things, but it's also the truth. It's not always about genius. Sometimes it's about a fucking paycheck. And it just is. And I mean, we'd all maybe like to have a world where, it's all about the passion and it's all like every single person in comics secretly loves it to their heart. But be honest. And I'm speaking directly to a couple of you from Marvel DC who would like to believe or like to tell me that, that every single person working in comics has a passion working in comics, and boy, the comics will break your heart, son, and whatever Jack Kirby said once upon a time, and all the rest of that stuff. But the reality is, for several people, and not a small amount, comics is a way to pay bills, sometimes not even that well, and it's a way to, more or less get your way into some better gig. Let's be real honest with each other. how many people, writers in particular, in comics, have told you that they really want to get into YA because that's where the money's at, or they're hoping to get a screenwriting gig, or their agent is getting them work in other places and getting them exposed to other stuff. Are you really going to, with a straight face, going to tell me you've never heard that before? That none of the people you talk to, none of your BarCon crowd has ever said this before? Really? Really? Never once have you heard this said. This is a bit like people in, on the kind of angry anti-SJW side who occasionally said, I have never once at any point in my entire life heard somebody say something racist about comics. Bullshit, you haven't. Everybody has. I get these arguments like, never have I ever seen anybody say something sexist. Oh, really? Not when some of the biggest names are talking about how you can only have, one woman for every 6 men, and women shouldn't really be working in comics as writers because their PMS makes them, crazy at turning in plots on time. You've never heard that before. I find that a little hard to believe when some pretty big-ass voices say that on a regular basis. But okay, maybe nobody has ever heard this before. You missed those episodes. That's fine. Anyway, my point, sorry, I've gotten astray. My point is that comics, as much as we would like it to be a kind of magical place where everybody in it is just in it for the spirit of comics, it's not the case. And so you look at the Sentry book. I'm sure the writer wants to be in comics or like to get writing credits in comics, but that writer is also thinking, hey, a Marvel gig is a Marvel gig. And there's no shame in that going, well, I want to get paid. I want to get that Marvel credit. This story idea sounds dumb as fuck, but, I want to take that money and I want to have this printed comic. So, I guess I'm just going to have to suck it up here a little bit. And yeah, I will write a Sentry book with a disabled, person of color. Okay. I guess so. By all means, be my guest. You can't fault the writer here. You can't be too angry with somebody who makes a choice to prioritize their career. It's fair. But that doesn't make the comic good. We don't have to gaslight each other to say, well, this guy is clearly passionate. So therefore we can ignore the fact that this premise, this story is garbage. You can be sympathetic to somebody for writing a comic that, really doesn't make any sense and doesn't honor the legacy and doesn't help anything whatsoever, and still say, hey, the guy's getting a gig and, got to put food on the table and respect that. But also the comic is crap. I mean, look, I read some of that Sentry series. I agree with your sentiment. Why make this at all? What's the point? It doesn't lend itself to corporate synergy. It doesn't, what does it do? It doesn't help anything. But I guess we can pretend that this is some kind of genius work of art. We can do that. But the other thing is, and this is a harder one, is not everything has to be a work of art. The reality is, some things are just corporate gigs. That is what it is. But why do this at all? The why do this at all is somebody at Marvel goes, hey, I read on Twitter, and I'm not even shitting you. This is how it went down. I read on Twitter that they cast, the Walking Dead kid that got his head beat in by a baseball bat by Negan. I read that they cast him as a Sentry. And the other person at Marvel goes, isn't he like a tiny Asian dude? Like the Sentry was like a big blonde dude. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's cool because we don't have any Asian superheroes like Shang-Chi. They should really do a movie on him. Anyway, but do you think we should do a comic? Yeah, I guess so. It was between like him and a Taskmaster limited series. So we've already done one of those, but I think it's probably time to do a Sentry. Like, yeah, let's do the Sentry. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if like the power of the Sentry went to somebody else? We call it Sentry, but it wasn't the Sentry at all. Yeah, we could do that. What do you think we should make it a character that looks like Steven Yeun? Well, we could, but then Greg Pak is going to want to write it, and like we don't want to afford him. So maybe we use maybe make, I don't know, let's do something else. And that's how. And like, who do we know? Well, hang on, let me see the latest person to have sent me an email. Do you know the amount of people, by the way, at the big two who'll go to cons and go, hey, I'm here at the con, but I'm gonna look at people, but I don't actually make any decisions, but I'm here. A lot of people, a lot of people pull that card. Anyway, so that's kind of how it goes. And then sure enough, they reach out to some writer, and the writer's like, fuck, I've been desperately trying to get anybody at Marvel to even answer an email or pretend like I'm even alive for the last, 8 years. So, finally they're getting back to me like, hey, yeah, we've wanted to work with you. Would you be interested in doing like a Sentry limited series? And the writer's like, isn't he dead? Like, no, it's a new Sentry. Like, maybe we could do a new Sentry, but it's like a different person now. And I don't know, write up a pitch. Like, send me a pitch for like a new Sentry, and we'll get this done. If you could send me a pitch, like, I know I took like 8 years to get back to you, for a single email, but if you could like give me that pitch like by 3:00 today, that'd be great. So if you just drop everything in your fucking life and do this, and then I will pay you, absolute like $60 a page to do this comic. And the writer's like, wow, these bastards. But, if I get that Marvel credit, then that will be my ticket to do something else that's more impressive, that's better. So I guess I better just suck it up and do it. And what I just described to you is how this comic was made. Maybe not, by the way. Maybe it was different. But I will tell you, what I just described to you is how a lot of comics get made at the big two. No lies detected. Thanks for listening.